Now let's look at a second use of commas, using them to aid with comprehension. So we have looked at how commas can be used to prevent misunderstandings within a sentence, but it's also important to know that commas are really helpful in aiding how we comprehend a sentence. That's not to say that without a comma you wouldn't know what was happening in a sentence, but just that they help to secure our understanding that little bit better. The most obvious example of using commas in this way is how we use them in lists. Here we have a description of a boy. The boy has blue eyes, brown hair, thin lips, and pale skin. The commas help break up and delineate the different aspects of his features. Now let's take a look at this sentence. Reading through it, you may be able to distinguish the two ideas, but you actively have to think about how and where to break up the sentence. This is an example of a run-on sentence. Trico said profit climbed 20% as it increased sales of hammers to China and forecast that earnings would rise again next year. A more elegant way of saying it would be like this. Trico said profit climbed 20% as it increased sales of hammers to China and forecast that earnings would rise again next year. Trico says two different things here, and the fact that we added a comma means the sentence doesn't run on, helping us see that these are two different things that Trico is talking about, not just one long and slightly confusing statement. Here's another example of how using a comma can effectively break up an otherwise long and complicated sentence. ASX's chief executive, Elmer Cupper, took over the company in October 2011 following the departure of Robert Elston and immediately began stamping his authority on the firm. Again, it's by no means impossible to work out what is happening here, but we do have to actively try and distinguish between the two separate clauses. Simply adding a comma in the correct place does all the hard work for us. ASX's chief executive, Elmer Cupper, took over the company in 2011 following the departure of Robert Elston, and immediately began stamping his authority on the firm. You can see and hear the difference here, now with the two ideas separated and the content much easier to understand.